Chase Smith, what's up, man?
Not much, Mikey. How are you doing today?
I'm great. Checking in from Virginia. Chase,
Yes.
dude, we we know each other from online, but we know each other from not fitness. We know each other from the music side of things.
Yeah. So cool how the world is it's all kind of connected, right? Like we were just talking a little bit before this, how like it's just wild how like the music dubstep side of things really meshes with like the fitness community as well. So I love how this is kind of bringing us together with this. Like the music
I
is what brought us
I
together.
can't tell you how many people I've started from music and then they're like into fitness too, and then it's turned into a fitness kind of
Yep.
culmination with dubstep. But it's crazy to me how many people like that listen to dubstep are really into weight training and powerlifting. I didn't know that until I really got into it.
Yeah. I mean, it's just I don't know. That music just lights a whole different fire underneath you, I think, and it makes for a really great workout.
It really does. It really does. What kind of music do you typically do listen to when you train?
Definitely a lot of dubstep stuff. Just really heavy headbanging, loud music,
Yeah.
screamo,
Yep.
like just all the stuff. Just
Yeah.
the heavier the better.
The heavier the better. Yeah, especially when you're really pushing it because you do powerlifting too. So Chase, you're an online coach, power lifter, podcast host. Your podcast is called Chasing Health Podcast. Would you just hit 30K downloads
Yep,
recently?
30K.
Dude, that's awesome. How does that feel? How long you been doing that?
I think I put out my first episode in 2021. It was one of the first ones.
So not too terribly long ago. I mean, 2020 time goes by like that. So 2021 doesn't sound like that long ago, but maybe it is.
Yeah, it definitely it feels like a long time, and it's one of those things where like part of me is like, oh, I wish it would be grow faster. Like, why isn't it growing? And all the normal podcast stuff. But I really had to like set my intention like and expectations like from the very beginning. People were like, when you get into podcasting, it's a very slow game. Like it's gonna take a long time. Like, and I already didn't have a huge audience to begin with, so it's not like I was able to like it's not like I have like 100,000 followers on Instagram. Like, go listen to my podcast.
Yeah.
I think I'm like under 3,000 still. So like,
Yeah.
just like it's just like a smaller audience to put it out to. But man, like it's just been super cool. Like, and thinking back to all the conversations I've had on the podcast, the guests and such. Like, it's just podcasting is probably one of my favorite things to do.
Were you always into podcasting like before you started a podcast? Like was that itch always there or was it how did you get the urge to get into podcasting?
It really didn't start until my health journey back in like 2019 when that started. 2020-ish maybe is when I started listening to more podcasts. And then just sort of listen more and more to them. And then eventually, I started seeing like some other coaches that I met in the online space, like starting their own podcasts. And I was just like, man, like how hard can it be? Right. Like I think it'd be cool. Like let's start a
Just ask a bunch
podcast.
of questions, right?
That's right. And just yeah. I mean, definitely. I was definitely one of those people. I have a ton of guest episodes at the very beginning because I hated solo episodes, and so
I'm
I
really
can't talk to
interested in
myself.
hearing about that. Yeah, so tell me about that cuz one thing that I'm noticing too is so far, I mean the whole premise behind this is having guests on,
Yeah,
but I mean, how many guests can I have on? I mean, at some point I'm going to hit a wall and I'm going to have to do some solo stuff. So I was kind of flirting with the idea of maybe doing some Q&A type stuff where I can field like some questions because I do get questions on Instagram and Facebook and stuff like that. So I was thinking about maybe why don't I do a Q&A episode? Why don't I, field a couple questions and then kind of fill in an episode myself because I don't think I'd have trouble talking. I'm kind of long-winded, which is why I started this whole thing. So what are your solo episodes like? Why were you resistant against it? And how did that kind of turn out?
so I love talking, but I love talking to people.
Yeah, gotcha.
And not just like the imaginary person that's on the other side of the microphone that I can't see, right? Like that was me. Like when I would start a solo podcast, it just felt so weird, just like talking about a topic for like, and like no one to bounce back with. Like even somebody just like, even if somebody wasn't talking much. Just I like being able to talk to somebody through Zoom or in person, like just have somebody to talk to rather than just going based off, I feel like after so long, I'd go like 10 minutes in and I'm also, and I've gotten better, but I'm also a very fast talker as well. And so I used to be really bad. I'd get through like my podcast notes in like 10, 15 minutes and be like, well, shoot, that was supposed to be a 30-minute episode. And so,
yeah, because even if you say the same words, you could fill in 3 times as much time if you just kind of slow down. I'm a fast talker too, though.
it definitely is taking a lot of time, and I'm still a fast talker a lot of times, but especially when I'm by myself. But it's been really nice to have guests on, and of course now I record with my co-host Chris, and so it's a lot nicer to have him to bounce back and forth with as well.
I bet having a co-host is a game changer because then you always got someone to talk to.
Yes,
that is. But
so
some people
nicer.
are good at talking by themselves. Some people could just talk. I need
Some
something where I can have some form of like a live chat where I'm some form of an interaction, other than I'm just going to talk about this topic, because I also struggle at just like looking at myself while I'm talking. It's so weird. Like seeing my reflection back when I'm talking throws me off my game. Like right now I'm talking to you, so I don't have a problem talking. But if I'm sitting here talking to myself, that throws me off for whatever reason. It even does it if like I'm doing an Instagram like story. Something about it is I think it's because it's not natural to see yourself while you're talking.
Yep.
That's it. So something about it just throws me off, and I kind of lose my train of thought like that, which is also kind of why I got into this, is because I was like, I don't like seeing myself while I'm talking. It's very short. I feel constrained. I have a timer that's looking me in the face like, better get this point out. I don't, that's just not how I operate. So and that's not what I consume. I consume long form.
Yep, exactly. And honestly, like I know you said like, eventually run out of gas, like you'd be surprised. Like the more you start podcasting, the more you start networking, like that has been also probably one of the coolest things too, is like you just get to talk to really cool people because like there's pretty much everyone, almost everyone, right? Like I feel like there's going to be a level eventually you're going to hit a threshold that, they're a big enough name that they're not going to just give you 30 minutes of their time. But most people will give you 30 minutes of their time. Like I've also been to a few like different coaching conferences and things like that. So like I've met Sal and Adam from Mind Pump. I've now had them on the show. I had one guy on the show, Chase Tuning, who's really big in the podcasting. He introduced me to Ebenezer Samuel. He's the Men's Health magazine fitness director. And then I had him on the show. Like just like your network starts to just continue growing bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger through podcasting. And it's just so much easier to find more people to talk to. And, like I said, pretty much anybody will hop on a podcast with anybody.
You make a great point. So far, I've had nothing but awesome experiences talking with the people that I've had on here. And then what ends up happening is you see people on Instagram or Facebook, but once you get that face to face, that develops a more personal connection. So you get to know them as a person, even if you've been following each other for 10 years. It's not the same. When you sit and you have a conversation, it does develop a personal connection and you end up appreciating each other more. And the nice thing that is the thing that's nice about these is we get to talk to whoever we want to talk to. So it's like, you don't have to talk to people you don't want to talk to. We're in the real world. You got to talk to mostly people you don't want to talk to. Like that, especially in like a corporate environment, like you're spending most of your time talking to people you'd rather be doing something else. So everyone who you're speaking with in every experience, it's like everyone is there because they want to be there. And I feel like that is a way more fun experience. Are you introverted or are you extroverted, like by nature?
I'm actually pretty introverted, which a lot of people don't see. Like, most people would probably consider me an extrovert, but I am definitely an introvert. Like, end of the day, after a day of peopling, as I say, I'm ready to check out. Like, I just need like the veg out for a little bit of time. and recharge myself. Yes.
Same here, man. Maybe that's why podcasting is interesting to us because like you're at your house. Like
Yeah.
you're not like out. I mean, yeah, I do get drained when I have to have conversations, but when I want to be there, it's a lot less than if I don't want to be there. The small talk gets me, dude. Like
Yeah.
small talk drives me crazy. Like something about being like conversation that's not substance. Like
Yes.
I like to get like let's talk about some real shit. Like let's
Yes.
talk about something that's like not a formality. The
Mhm.
formalities, it's like, well, that's a waste of time
Yes.
and energy, quite
Yeah.
frankly. More importantly.
Yeah. And I feel like with podcasting, it's just that time when you get to really just start to pick somebody else's brain. Like, I I almost view podcasting sometimes, and I don't want people to take this the wrong way, but almost like a little bit selfishly as well. Right. Like
In what way?
you because I get 30 to 60 minutes of somebody else's time. And yes, I'm going to make sure that provides a shit ton of value for my listeners. But I'm also going to ask a lot of really awesome things that I want to know about from that guest as well. That I get to dig a little bit
Yeah.
deeper. I've gotten better at this over time, but like, before it was always the same basic questions, like, tell me your story, oh, like, how do you do this? How do you do that? Like now I want to talk about all the things that people don't talk about. Like,
Yes.
like you hear people's story broadcasted all over Instagram, whatever it be like sure we'll touch on that, but I want to take it a step further and ask the questions that kind of catch people off guard, because that's when, like, I know before we
Can
hit
you give
record
me an
here.
example? Because I agree with what you're saying. In fact, when someone says something interesting to me and I'm like, whoop, ding, 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 like,
Yeah.
let's go down that rabbit hole. Not to turn this into a whole podcasting episode, because episode is not about podcasting. This episode is about sustainable fat loss, which we will get into, and let's go deep into this, man, because like kind of the stuff that we were talking about just now. Let's talk about like the real stuff, the stuff that people don't necessarily talk about, and let's kind of give like experiences that we've had, good, bad. Let's just break it down from like a relatable standpoint so we can provide a bunch of value, but also share some things that people aren't necessarily going to hear elsewhere. So we will get into that, but go on. Give me like a good, like, what's an example that you can think of, like,
Oh man.
of that? Or
Yeah,
like
man.
something that, like, what's something that, like, brought out like a interesting answer that you just didn't expect to hear.
I I'm really trying to put like my finger on something, but it's basically just like when what I love sometimes digging into is like, for like, I guess I'll kind of use a little bit of a broader example. I can't think of an exact example, but just to kind of a little bit broader here. Like, for example, if somebody starts telling me about their story and like what happened, and like, that, they were here and they got to here, like, and they kind of sometimes they'll gloss over like what that pivotal turning moment was, or like the thing that like really made them change and like want to take action towards
Yeah,
something, whatever it may have been. And I'll start like saying, like, what was it in that moment that made everything change?
you're
Like,
foreshadowing right now,
yeah.
because this is the stuff that I want to know about, because your transformation is fucking crazy, dude. Body, but also mind,
Mm-hmm.
which is, I mean, equally important. So that is the stuff that I want to know about you, because when did you start like your transformation? Was it on January 1st, 2019 that you first stepped
It
foot in the gym?
was. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Like what it's turn a mirror. This might be a little uncomfortable because you're typically the person asking these questions, but like turn that mirror, kind of mirror that on yourself. Like what got you into the gym on January 1st? I mean, this is a perfect time of the year. I mean, this is, I mean, we're in January, so it is the busiest time of the year for fitness.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the year where most people start, and 50% don't make it to March. So
Unfortunately.
yeah, right. So Speaking of which, did you ever try before 2019?
Oh yeah.
Okay, let's start there actually.
Oh yeah. That's
So
why I
yeah,
always say
okay.
when people say like tell me your story, like when did your story start? I'm always like, my
Okay,
story really
yeah.
didn't start in 2019.
All right, so why don't we start there, man? Because I'm curious to know just from a selfish standpoint, like why didn't you keep with it before, and like what was your, I mean, what was going on in your world?
Nothing ever was sustainable. Everything was always a quick fix. Everything was a band-aid. Everything was just like, let's just diet down as quick as I can, as fast as I can to see like get some great results. None of it was what am I doing for the long term? None of
Did you
it
have success in
was,
those areas though? Like when you would try, did you like lose weight initially and like
yeah,
maybe lose a lot and then kind of
I would
yo-yo back?
lose 20, 30, I think 1 or 2 years,
Okay.
I maybe even lost like closer to 40 pounds.
Yeah, that's a
Um,
lot.
and then just gain it all back every single year. I would do, gosh, like Weight Watchers, fasting. I did Atkins for a while.
Yeah.
I think I tried like Nutrisystem when I was like in my teens, like early teens, like just like all the random stuff out there that's just whatever the quick fix was at that time, whatever the fad diet was at that time. First of the year, it's like, all right, I want to lose weight. This is my year. I'd say that every year. This is my
Yeah.
year. And I would look at like, all right, what's the thing? What's everybody doing now? And I would, all right, so it looks like everybody's doing Atkins. All right, so I'm gonna go buy my Atkins bars and get ready,
Right.
no carbs. And that would, I would give it a shot.
There,
And like I
so
said,
like these very drastic
yeah,
approaches, which usually come with very low foods or very unsustainable approaches to nutrition, like no carbs. Some of them are no fat. Some of them are just low everything. And then
mhm.
like really aggressive types of exercise, typically in the form of cardio. Was that going on too?
Yep. It was not every time, but I definitely there were a lot of times I'd go to the gym and like hop on the elliptical or the treadmill or just something to do cardio.
Yep.
And that was my version of like the gym. Like I look at the weights and be like, oh no, that's not my
What
I
was
don't do
that? What
that.
was the reason behind it? Was it because weights, was it because weights equal big, or
Yeah.
is it because just the free weight section is so by and large in every gym so fucking weird? Like that's where all the weird stuff's going on.
No, it was more so, yeah, like the getting big. Like it was like, oh, I don't want to
Gotcha.
get big and strong and bulky. Like, no,
Right.
I want to lose weight. I want to get skinny. I
Right.
want to, feel better. And so like I always thought like you gotta burn off the calories and you gotta eat a lot less.
Yeah.
And that was my whole thought process behind dieting for the longest time. And that's when it really like kind of led up to like eventually in 2019 to talk about like that turning point of like when it finally changed was actually a friend and coworker at the time. I have a nursing background, worked as a nurse for about 7-ish years. And at this time I was working at a state psychiatric hospital, and a coworker challenged me to a weight loss challenge. She was like, hey, I know you want to lose weight. I want to lose weight as well. How about we like do a challenge with each other and just hold each other accountable? And I was like, okay, sure, sounds cool. Like to me, to be completely honest, looking back, like I thought it was just going to be like every other year when nothing else has worked. My weapon of choice that year happened in 2019 happened to be intermittent fasting, just because I thought that was the thing to do
Sure.
at that
Yeah.
time, and also a lot of quote unquote clean eating
Yeah.
at that time as well. And so started off doing that, was seeing some great progress, of course. But then after a while, I started to come across like what like nutrition coaches online and like learning more about them and seeing more posts on Instagram. And I started like reading more about that stuff. And that's when I learned a little bit more about like calories and macros and like what's actually required for fat loss. And that's when I started to learn more about like what an actual calorie deficit is. And like that's all that's required for fat loss. Like I don't have to intermittent fast. I don't
Yeah.
have to eat clean or
Yeah.
like whatever it may be like during those times. Like I can just be in a calorie deficit and
Yeah.
lose weight. And for the longest period of time, I wasn't even tracking the first part of the year. It was
Yeah,
just
you could
all,
get away with a lot at first, right? Like you can
oh
get
yeah,
away your first year, those like formidable years of just doing things. You could do a lot wrong and get great results, which is kind of it's nice because it gives you this like buffering time of like getting the skills down, getting the mindset skills down, getting the fundamentals down, and then slowly working on improving those. But don't you think it's par for the course to go through, now that you've been doing it for a couple of years, don't you think that like making those mistakes, it's just there's not many people that just dive into tracking macros and calories and just gaining a full understanding of how things work right
Oh
away.
yeah.
Usually people fall a couple times before they figure out, okay, this isn't working. I need to get educated. And
Hmm.
also like these really drastic approaches that we're talking about. That's why we're so passionate about what we do, because spreading awareness so people can avoid these pitfalls, that's
Hmm.
really important to us.
Hmm.
Coming from someone who's done it and someone who's been in those shoes, I imagine that you have are able to empathize with your clients and people who come to you for help in in
100%.
a in a huge way, because you know what that's like. You know what you know you know what it's like to be at that point in your life. And those
Yeah.
starting, like when you see someone send over their starting progress pictures, like you feel for that person. I
Oh,
always do. Like
yes.
I always do. And you know, when you don't buy into the process, that's when things go wrong. Like
Hmm.
you've done this multiple times now. Can't tell you how many times I've lost fat, build muscle, lost fat, build muscle. I'm coming from a bodybuilding background, but
Yeah.
principles are still the same.
Yep.
You still have to do the same thing for fat loss.
Hmm.
So I don't think about it. I know what to do. When I'm going through it, I don't doubt that, oh, is this going to work? But when you've never gone through this process before, you're not fully trusting what's going on. So
Hmm.
that ad about, hey, lose this amount in this short a period of time with this little pill starts to look real appealing.
Unfortunately, yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
right.
it. It kills me. Like I was just talking to a client the other day about, we were kind of joking, but also like it's still like just crushes me inside to see it. But like, you walk through like the grocery store aisle and you have like all those like women's world magazines and things like that that are like, lose 30 pounds in 2 weeks and like all this like,
Yeah,
crazy stuff. And I'm just like, none of that is necessary. Like, and
right.
it's unrealistic. It is setting so many unrealistic norms for so many people. I mean, like, and even just like past dieting attempts sets you up for feeling like you're failing when you're doing it the correct way. Like, I've had a
Yeah,
client that has come from a Optavia background. She lost 50 pounds in like no time and gained it all back.
yeah, of course.
And then when she came to work with me, seeing fantastic progress, a pound a week, losing, maybe even, half pound, or some weeks, maybe a pound and a half to 2 pounds, depending on how progress is going. But in her mind, she was still failing because she wasn't doing a good enough job. She wasn't losing fast enough. And even though she knew, she could tell me, like, she's like, I know this is coming from my expectations of when I did Optavia. But in my mind, I'm still viewing myself as a failure because that was faster. That looked a lot better. That felt a lot better in the moment. But then having to completely shift your thinking to something that is much more sustainable, it's a complete mind fuck, to be honest, like when it comes to that kind of stuff.
The scale, seeing the scale go down, that is such a emotional experience for people.
Mm-hmm.
And the often the most I think the most important part, arguably, isn't the diet. The weight loss, the scale loss, that's important, obviously. You're losing fat,
Mm-hmm.
you're losing fat, you're losing fat.
Mm-hmm.
That part where you reach that wall and you can't lose anymore without going to, a 1200 calories or something ridiculous, something unsustainable.
Mm-hmm.
That part of weight maintenance, building muscle, and getting your body prepped for more fat loss is that's the golden ticket.
Mm-hmm.
That's the area where you make the most amount of progress, because that progress is what's going to carry you for years to come. So
Mm-hmm.
your next cycle of weight loss, that all rides on this area. Also, not gaining that weight that you just lost also rides on this area. So what is more important than this area? So how did you approach it when you lost the weight initially? How did you approach that time of, okay, let's not do the same things that we did in the past? Because that's typically where people are like, okay, I've hit a wall. I was just talking with someone on Facebook about this. They reached out, and they had hit a wall. They were eating very low calories and they had lost like 50 pounds.
Mhm.
Great. So they've lost 50 pounds. Okay. That first 25, that's coming off smooth like
Oh, yeah.
butter. Okay. The next bit, it starts to slow down, adaptations occur, and you hit that wall, which is completely normal.
Yep.
What happens next? So this is the part where you have to start adding calories, bring calories back up, bring, any cardio, stuff like this, any additional activity, bring things to a more sustainable place, because even sustainable fat loss isn't sustainable permanently. It's a cycle.
Yep.
You don't just lose fat for the rest of your life. You have to have these phases so you can keep doing it. And then that's how you change your physique over time. And it takes time.
Yes,
it
does.
takes time. The more body fat that you have on your frame, the longer it takes.
Yep.
So approaching this part delicately, and strategically is very, very important. I will never stop talking about it because it's the most important part of the entire thing, but it's the part where that weight isn't going down anymore.
Mhm.
And that really messes with people's heads because of what you said. I'm so used to, especially when you first get started. Let's say you're,
Mhm.
you're 300 pounds or whatever. You don't need to start in this place.
Yeah.
So you could start with fat loss and you
Correct.
could lose a bunch. So you're so used to losing weight for months and months and months and months. And that's like super motivating, which we'll talk about motivation too. Because I'm sure you got your own thoughts on motivation.
Yeah.
But um when that stops, I find this is the part where people struggle the most because of the patience, not seeing the weight go down. And and if people just eat back to like regular from what they were doing, let's say let's say they end their diet in a calorie standpoint of like 1,500 calories, just to give an arbitrary number here.
Yep.
And they start eating, okay, well, I'm not losing weight anymore. Fuck this. This sucks. Going out, drinking again.
Mhm.
It happens pretty quickly where people say, screw it.
Yep.
Also these time, let's say you start your weight loss at this time, like January, by the 4th of July, like that's when, summer social obligations, things pick up
Mhm.
and social life becomes a little crazy. That's where, like, okay, now the weight gain starts to happen. So by the following year, January, you're back where you were, if not worse.
Yep.
So how did you mentally handle this part, and what caused you to kind of make that shift from like previous habits? I just think it's so important.
Yeah. So I think it's gonna be obviously a little bit individual for everybody, and I think it's something that. So in my unique case, I kind of go over that for a moment and then kind of share a little bit more, expand on it some. But like in my unique case, I had lost a good bit of weight. I forget exactly how much. Like I had lost like 50 some pounds by like summertime.
That's a
Like,
lot.
yeah. Yeah. I looking back before, like, again, like when I was doing intermittent fasting and the clean eating, I was eating like 1,400 calories a day, being almost 400 pounds.
Hard, man.
Like
Being how
but
much?
almost 400 pounds.
And you were eating 1,200 calories a day?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. You must have been losing weight like
It was
like
falling
5 pounds
off.
a day.
Yeah, it was basically falling
Yeah.
off. And
Yeah.
and again, like you talked about earlier, mistakes made. Like
Yeah.
even with this current journey that I'm on, since my 2019 journey started, I've made tons of mistakes. And going back, like there's so many things that I would do differently and so many things, but I also always say like everything happens for a reason. But so I lost a ton of weight throughout the first part of the year and going into the fall. And throughout the summertime, I was talking to a coach that I had met, and he kept kind of telling me like, "Hey, you're gonna eventually have to start bringing up calories a little bit." And I was just like, "Nope, nope, nope, not doing that. That
Typical.
doesn't."
And as a coach now, you're probably thinking back like, you pain in the ass. You know it
Yes.
all. Like when because as a coach, I'm sure you have people come up to you all the time and they'll say things and like in your head as they're saying things, you know what the right thing is to do.
Mhm.
And you could tell them till you're blue in the face, but sometimes people have to make these mistakes.
Yep. And so eventually, I think it was around like August, I had hit my quote unquote plateau at that time, and I just was really really struggling. Just didn't know why this wasn't working anymore for me. Like I had lost a ton of weight, and like just it just wasn't working anymore. And so at the times actually when I ended up hiring that same coach and working with him one on one, we brought my calories up. We basically, I mean, like being almost 400 pounds and like working through like down through that, like I was still able to diet for pretty much most of the year, in a much more healthier and sustainable deficit. Obviously, like towards the end of the year, like we worked up to like 25, 26,
So you
2700
were bringing your
calories.
calories up and losing weight, right?
Correct. Yes.
Gotcha.
And I think but I think it's also important to point out too. One thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is when you hit this quote unquote plateau, usually it's one or two things are happening here. We're either one, we're seeing those metabolic adaptations, but that's actually a little bit smaller percentage of people. Which usually happening is we're getting these we're starting to lack in adherence, and not even like intentionally, right? Like people aren't like intentionally going out on the weekends and be like, oh, this is when I just get to eat whatever I want and go balls to the wall. Like that might happen, but like most time people are like just start not tracking this, not tracking
It's
that.
why you can't even trust like case studies when it comes to nutrition.
Yeah.
It's hard
It,
because when it
adherence
comes to
starts to
people's
slip.
yeah, when it comes to people's food, this sounds bad, but you can't trust what they're saying.
No.
You can't. And they oftentimes aren't aware. I mean,
Yes.
that peanut butter scoop that they're taking, it's not put on a food scale.
No.
It's not 32 grams. It's a heaping scoop of peanut butter and it's rounded and it's eyed by the eye. Well, those are how, that's calories right there. There are all these different things, you know,
Yeah.
oil, oil cooking
Yeah.
on the pan, all these different little things
Exactly.
start to show the more weight that you lose.
Exactly. And so like and also just like that diet fatigue, right? Like after you've been
Yeah.
dieting for such a long period of time, like I see this with a client all the time. Like they'll lose a lot of weight and they get to a point where they're just like, Chase, I'm just burnt out. Like I just need a break. And actually I love when they finally bring it up to me and I'm like, it's about time. I
Yeah.
jokingly tell them, I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, this is a great time when we probably need to go to maintenance at this time,
Yeah.
start bringing calories back up, give you that intentional break. Because that's the thing is like, you're probably either going to unintentionally put yourself at maintenance because you're having weekends or untracked food that are like really higher calories and things like that, or you're going to make a choice to intentionally go to maintenance and still gain control of all of that situation.
So what Chase is referring to is there's different names for it, but it's a diet break.
Correct.
And so let's talk about that because diet breaks are important. I think they're
Mm-hmm.
really important. Did you see that new study that came out by Brad Schoenfeld that actually it's this, I don't know how much I buy into this. But apparently that diet breaks can increase the metabolism. Implemented diet breaks throughout a cut can increase your metabolism by like 47 calories, which is it was ended up being like four potato chips or something. And I was
Okay,
thinking to
so
myself,
not much, but
I go, not much, but damn, there comes a time in prep, those four potato chips,
I
I
bet.
I'll come off those four potato chips. That's
Kudos to you. That is never a space that I ever plan on going
yeah,
into. But
right. That's prep brain right there. But
yeah.
so let's talk about diet breaks because there is physical burnout, of course. So when things start happening, like if you're cutting for a long time and you're training and you're starting to notice little aches and pains and tendons and soft tissue and lifting headaches and you can't sleep and you're having recovery issues, that's a good
Mhm.
time for a diet break. But that's more for like, I find that's more for athletes. when it comes to the general population, it ends up being more psychological. And like you
Yep.
said, you just get burnt out. You start feeling fatigue. When someone starts telling me, you know what, I just felt like I need to pig out. It's like, okay, how much weight have we lost?
Yep.
Let's hit that diet break, because you don't want to get to a point where you don't want to get to a point where you start binging. That means
Yeah.
you've gone too far. I have no problems pushing it to the limit. And
For
sometimes
sure.
that's good to do. Like, people are capable of much more than they think they are. But you
Yes.
don't really, I mean, towing that line and crossing that threshold are two different things. You don't want to get to the point where it's like, okay, now I can't stick to my diet because my cravings are so intense. Because when you're dieting, cravings, hunger, all of these things increase tremendously. So, which is normal. And, there's a certain amount of like white knuckling it that you need to do once you get to a certain point. But also, once you start feeling like, okay, I'm not in control anymore, you don't want to get there. So let's talk diet breaks. When do you typically like recommend a diet break? When did you take your own diet breaks? Like, what are some things that you look for when it comes to that?
Yeah, so kind of speaking more towards like what I recommend, like as far as listeners and my clients and such, is again, like anytime we start noticing some of those physical symptoms, like you mentioned, like recovery, or we're having some really bad hunger, cravings are through the roof, or maybe starts, and then like more psychological stuff like compliance is slipping, things like that. Because I also think it's really important to point out as well, nothing is more frustrating than being in diet mode in your head, but not seeing the progress, because
Yeah.
you're trying so hard to get the results you're looking for, but you're unintentionally ruining your progress or sabotaging yourself because you're just burnt out. Right. And so like so I think it's really important to make it clear of like, this is time to go into a diet break versus like, we can keep this going. And so as far as like going into it again, like physical symptoms, any type of burnout, if we, I think another great time is when you have events or
Right.
vacations. That's a
Yeah.
big one that I always pull, like, and that's actually like when I start looking at like putting somebody into a cut or a deficit or, whatever you want to call it, fat loss phase. Then I also like when we're starting it, I start looking for like, what's the light at the end of the tunnel. Right. So like, all right, so let's go ahead and look ahead. What plans you have coming up? Let's say we started like, January 1st, and they're like, yeah, like in the end of March, I actually have a wedding that I'm going out of town for like 5 days. I'm like, sweet, we're gonna go ahead and plan for a diet break then. That way you're not stressing. It'll probably be about a good time, a good 3-ish months before we get to that. A good time just to go and pop up the maintenance or that time. Because like, let's be honest, like when you're traveling, it can make it a little bit more challenging to stick to your goals. And also it depends on like the travel purposes itself. But that would be a great time for a diet break. If you are sick, I think it's really important to bump calories back up to a diet break, because you're sick, stress on the body. A deficit is a stress on the body. Like it's a great time for as well to drop into or raise back up to a diet break. And then just also just sometimes again, I've even had clients where like they don't really say they need it, they don't think they need it, but maybe just not being super consistent, just funk of life sometimes. Just it's like, what, like this might just be a time just to like just regulate everything. Let's just get consistency back again, bring calories up a little bit, give you that time to rest. And I think it's also important to point out diet breaks can be 2 to 3 days, or it could even be an entire week. I've had clients take a diet break for like 2, 3 weeks. Like it
Yep.
just really is dependent on what they need in that current situation as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, you bring up a great point about special occasions. It's also why it's so important to be consistent outside of the times
Yes.
like the holidays. I mean, we're just coming out of the holidays, so those are fresh on my mind.
Yeah.
Whenever I have the holidays approaching, I'm like, okay, what do you have going on? When I talk to the client, like, what do you have going on? What are you guys doing for the holidays? You doing anything special? Oh yeah, my sister comes into town. We have a great time. We do this, we do that. Awesome. That's great. I want you to do that. We're going to
Yep.
plan on you doing that. I don't want you restricting for the holidays. I want you to have,
Mm-hmm.
I want you to focus on your friends and your family and your loved ones and enjoying this. You don't have a deadline. it's different if you have a deadline. So I'm coming
For
from a
sure.
prep mind.
Yep.
You know,
Good
that's
point.
like, okay, well, you chose to prep in March. You're going to be bringing your food to grandma's. That's just whatever.
Yep.
But for the rest of the world, if you don't have a deadline, there's no need to restrict. So it's let's focus now on these months leading up to the holidays, and then we'll be consistent after. And then let's plan a diet break for around this time. And even if that we're not diet break ready, it's still let's plan for some untracked meals that you don't
Yes.
typically have on a day-to-day basis. I'm talking about the fun stuff, not the
Yep.
calorie friendly this or the calorie friendly that. I want you to go and have some fun because there is merit to having these foods so you don't feel so restricted. We're talking about
Yes.
sustainability. So why don't we talk about that? How do you go about like special occasions and just travel? We even talked about like EDM, like going to EDM shows, stuff like that. Let's talk about like some of these like real world scenarios that all of us find ourselves in at some point or the other. So, how do you personally handle that? How do you recommend your clients handle that? Let's kind of like go in depth on this because I think this is the stuff that people can like benefit from hearing, and also like hearing like, oh, that's how Chase handles that. That's how Mikey handles that. Like, I'm sure we have very similar, but maybe different approaches. So let's discuss.
Yeah. So I think first and foremost, I love what you already even covered. Like as far as like we build consistency around those times so we can enjoy those games. Not that you have to
Mhm.
earn it. I'm not a big fan of like earning something or
Totally agree.
whatever, but
Yep.
like, but be consistent, right? Like it, I can tell you that my clients that feel the best when they go on vacation and are able to just have an amazing time, they feel better when they've been really consistent around it.
Yeah.
Leading up to it, they've been on track with things, they've been
Mhm.
tracking, they're really consistent, they're seeing progress. And it's like, all right, now the holiday or the vacation comes up, let's talk about travel. And so another thing is, so that's the first thing. And then secondly, I think it's really important to like go into it with like, what is your intention of this vacation or trip or whatever else it may be? Is this just a business trip out of town that you can still manage a lot of things and still want to be pretty consistent with your nutrition? Maybe you can go work out at the hotel gym, whatever may
Maybe
be.
estimate some food in from the restaurant, track it, still track
Exactly.
it, but not be like so overly strict with like weighing it and stuff.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
Exactly. And that's why I also encourage people to like weigh out very consistently when you're at home. So when you do go out to eat, you have a better idea of like when you're looking at your plate of food, like, oh, that's probably 6 ounces of chicken breast or whatever else it may be. And like
It's
you,
such good practice.
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um, and then I also, and so when you're, and then it might be a trip where it's like, maybe you want to enjoy it. Like if it's like your honeymoon and you're going to like
Yeah.
Aruba, like don't track. Enjoy.
Honey, I need to weigh my swordfish. Chase said I need to weigh my swordfish. No.
Exactly. Like I want you to eat anything you want to. I want you
Yeah,
to do
right.
whatever you want to. Like that is not the time I care
Yeah.
1 ounce of
No.
like your health and fitness. I'm sorry. Like, but that's the kind of clients I work with. Is like I
It's
want you
when
to be
like
able to.
it's when special occasions become every week that you're like,
Yes.
okay, this is not like you're like you said, this business trip isn't a special occasion. Let's adhere here. Let's be tight on our game. It doesn't have to be perfect, but let's
Yes.
still aim to
Do
be like
something rather than
consistent.
nothing.
Exactly. That way, when you get to that honeymoon, and we're just using honeymoon as the big
Exactly.
one. That way, when you get to that special occasion, you can go because it's not it sucks when you're sucking and you're not doing well, and then you have a
Yeah.
trip, and then you come back and you just go. It's all regret, and it's
Yep.
very difficult.
I mean, perfect. I'll even use a perfect example. Client I just found out today. One of my clients, she's been crushing it. Obviously, a little bit of a break during the holidays here and there, but she did some traveling, did great while she was traveling. And then she came back, and now we're getting started again with her deficit. She's doing really great. And she just told me today that she found out that her and her son are going to go to Paris and Amsterdam in April. And I'm like, all right. So, like, now we know from now until then, we're going to be really consistent. We're going to make some great progress to hit your goals. So when you go to Paris, you feel amazing. You feel on top of the world and you can have a great time and not stress one bit about it. And that's the kind of like trip that I'm talking about there. Is like be able to enjoy yourself, not stress the stuff. And then I think there's also a lot of other trips in between that are maybe not as, on point as like a business trip, but also not the free for all like the honeymoon. There's kind of like the in between. And I think that's where a lot of people fall or should fall the majority of the time, probably.
Yep.
And when it comes to those kind of trips, I think it's just important to, doing something rather than nothing. And even if it is like, I have a couple of different methods I've used with clients, if they're comfortable tracking, like if I have somebody who's like super experienced into tracking, very comfortable doing so, cool. We may track a little more than someone who like maybe only a month or two into this and isn't super familiar with tracking. I don't want it to be a stressor. That's the biggest thing. Like,
Yeah.
I don't want you to go on vacation. And if you're already not super comfortable about tracking and now you have to worry about eating out all the time and stressing about tracking this or tracking that, like, okay, how about this? How about we focus on you eat protein with all of your meals? How about we try to get in some veggies in some of your meals, at least twice a day? There are a couple, I mean, like, it sounds funny, but I mean, if somebody's eating
No,
out
it
a lot of
doesn't.
times, like,
You do have to parent people at times to eat their fruits and vegetables. It's a very normal thing.
yeah. And, and then so a couple other methods that I've used is, one, like, all right, maybe we have one meal a day that you just enjoy. You get to pick whatever you want to eat. The other two, let's add a little more structure to it. Maybe something a little bit of a less carbon fats. That way, because we all know eating out carbs and fats you can get wherever you want, like in plentiful amounts.
Anything that tastes good.
Exactly, but protein
Yeah.
on the other hand, is actually a little more challenging when we're eating out some places, especially because they control the portion sizes, they control like so much about it, and also sometimes it's like fried or maybe not the best option some places. Um,
There's just so much to unpack in everything that you just said. So,
yeah,
before we go further, I do want to, I mean, we could make a whole podcast on just everything that you just said.
I
So
know.
building that skill set is kind of like progressive overload. You don't
Hmm.
just start having all of the skills. You don't just
Yep.
start knowing calories, knowing that things that taste good are carbs and fats,
Yeah.
knowing what foods have more calories in them, knowing how to order your food, knowing portion sizes. This is all part of the skill set that you build as you go through this process. So, like you said, if you're amateur, beginner, or even intermediate, if you try to do all of this stuff at the beginning, that's where things start to get a little unsustainable. We're
Hmm.
talking from experience, so we're talking about an advanced level, whereas that those things that may cause you stress as a beginner don't cause you stress at, well, they can in some cases, but
Yeah.
in many cases they do not cause you stress because you've sharpened your sword. You spent
Hmm.
your years learning how to do these things to the point where it really, the way that I like to explain it is this stuff becomes very seamless and integrated into your life to the point where you don't really think about it. You just are able to do these things and they become more actions than anything else. Where in the beginning, what am I going to pack? What am I going to bring? How am I going to do this? What am I? So
Hmm.
it becomes like, let's focus on some basics, just some
Hmm.
principles, and you can do a lot with that. A ton with that. That's a great approach, what you said for vacation. So, um, how do you handle your vacations? Because when I go on vacation, I handle it very similarly to what you said. I would say on the high end of that in terms of I do bring my food. Like if I'm going to Florida, which I'm going to at the end of this month, I'm gonna be at my dad's house. So I'm bringing my scale, I'm bringing protein, I'm bringing all these things. It's gonna be like my life is just there for the most part.
Hmm.
However, I'm going to have my free meals in the evening. So
Yep.
during the day, I'm going to be getting my protein in. I'm going to be weighing my food and doing these things, not because any other reason than I want to. So
Yep.
this is just a me thing. I
Yep.
prefer to do it. I know that causes some people stress. It could be triggering for some people. If it is, don't do it.
Yep. Exactly.
But for me, that's that's what I like. So I really enjoy doing it. So I will be having my protein treats and protein shakes, which I will be bringing. I'm big on like protein, like you said, it's hard to do. But
Mhm.
knowing what is around you, knowing your surroundings, like for me, like I'll be able to go to a grocery store. That's no problem. But a lot of
Yep.
people won't have access to that. So maybe bring some protein treats, some protein bars, protein powder if you can bring it on the plane. Um, I do get searched on the plane every
I
time
was
that
gonna
I go.
ask.
Every time that I go. I told this story in the fat loss workshop that we just put on at Unrivaled. Whenever I travel, so I always bring supplements with me. So what supplements? What does that mean? Well, I bring a big giant ass bag of protein. I'll dump an entire tub of protein into a giant, one of those large Ziploc
Yep.
bags. You can
Yep.
fit an entire jug of protein in that. So
Yep.
I will bring that jug of protein in bag form because
Oh
it just takes
no.
up less space. I'll also bring creatine because I do take
Yep.
creatine every day,
White
and I
powdery
don't.
substance.
Okay, so here's where we start getting into the shady looking powders. Creatine that looks like cocaine. That just
Yes, it
it looks
does.
like a shady powder. So uh I'll bring that in a bag, and you put it in a plastic bag, it looks even shadier. It's not like the
Yes.
bag says creatine on it. So
Yeah.
um I'll bring that. I'll bring pre-workout. So that's another white
Powdery
powder.
substance.
Yeah,
Yep.
so these things look, and then I'll bring all my vitamins and I'll put that in a Ziploc. I'll just be like, okay, how many days am I going to be gone?
Yep.
Bada bing, bada boom, throw them all in a Ziploc. Cool. I got all my subs.
Hmm.
But it's 95% chance that I'm getting searched. So I do get searched almost every time I go to the airport. So I've had the bomb squad call where they're like,
Gosh.
yeah, because and every time I ask them, I go, why does this stuff get flagged? They're like, I don't know. Because sometimes it just gets flagged. And then so they have to bring the squad and they have these
Oh
little
my gosh.
things that they wipe to see like, okay, this
Yep.
isn't anything like it kind of makes me feel good though, because I'm like, okay, well, that's good. I'm getting on a plane. I don't necessarily want to every time I get through, I'm like, I don't know about this. I
Right.
don't know
Yeah.
about this ride. This one doesn't seem as safe. So, and then I'll tell them, they go, all right, we got to pat you down. I go, I know. They go, you want us to bring you to the curtain? And I go, no, right here is fine because they have to pat you everywhere when they're
Yep.
doing that. So they're patting. I go, it's kind of nice. You get a little full body massage before you get to your gate. It's not the worst thing in the world. It doesn't feel too terrible. Anyway, that's completely off topic. But so I do bring like protein, so I have that stuff on hand. But like I know in this scenario I can go grab like I'm going to Florida, so like they have octopus there. Like if you ever had octopus, it's just pure protein. So
Yeah.
I'm eating things like protein throughout the day, keeping my calories a little bit lower
Yep.
throughout the day. So like let's say maybe I'm having carbs and fats with every meal on a normal day-to-day basis. Obviously I am. I'll watch my carbs and fats because I'm saving my calories because I know I'm going out to dinner. And
Yep.
when I go out to dinner, that's when we have all of the things like whatever, hamburgers and the good food. Me,
Yes.
dessert. I like having dessert and stuff like that. So, I'll be very conservative during the day. That's if I'm going to have like a special occasion meal. I don't call them cheat meals. I call them special meals because they're not cheating. They're special
Yep.
and they're meant for making memories and being with people that I care about and enjoying the time together. And that's what we do. But
Yep.
if I'm tracking or something like that, that's when I'll go, okay, let me opt for something more friendly and predictable. So like salmon, I know that's pretty
Hmm.
predictable. Chicken, that's pretty predictable. Beefs, these different foods that you know from that practice, from all of those reps that you did, where you're weighing your food, you're like, okay, I can eye this. I know that's probably 4 ounces. Ooh, that one looks more like 6 to 8. Let me go ahead and
Hmm.
overestimate a tad, kind of give
Yep.
myself a little cushion.
Overestimating. Yep.
And then I'll do things like ask my waiter not to prepare my food with butter or oil because that's just most places, they don't care about anything
No.
other than making those vegetables taste like they're amazing or making
Yep.
that food taste good. So they're sneaking all kinds of butter and oil, and that's what they cook with in the back, and they
Yep.
don't care. So even when you do tell them, you're still getting some trace butter and oil from like the utensils that they cook with and things like that.
Yep.
But it helps to bring that down a little bit in terms of you're just saving yourself from unnecessary calories. So these are all things that you learn along the way, and you just have different ways of approaching different scenarios for whatever phase you're in of cutting or um, adding muscle or just in life. It depends what you're
Yeah.
doing. You know, we're all doing different things. So I've used all these approaches for whatever I'm working on. So there's just many different ways to do things. And what we're trying to do is kind of give examples of how we go about these things and how we recommend our clients to go about these things. So there's just so like when you said that, like that's just there's a lot to unpack here when it comes to sustainability because all of these things are techniques that are it's not realistic to not go travel, right? It's
Yeah.
not realistic to not leave your house. So you have to have approaches that allow you to do such things. These like Atkins, how are you going to go out of town and avoid a carb? like right, like how
Take
are you
all
going
their
to or like
bars with
how
you.
yeah, you're going to be on the plane. Oh, you're like, "Oh, I'm sorry. What would you like on our flight?" Well, I'm on the carnivore diet. You got a steak? Like,
Yeah.
so
Just
you need
yeah.
to be able to have some wiggle room and your approach needs to be it needs to allow for some flexibility. I mean, that's what we're talking about. This is there's a huge amount of flexibility here.
Yeah, you have to, and I think the biggest thing is just like going with the flow as well. I think it's just really important. And I tell all my clients like control what you can control and try not to stress too much about the things you can't. Because I feel like where some people will get into like some deep waters if they, they let's say they're going out to lunch and like, oh, I'm gonna get a salad and go out to lunch. And let's say like you get there and like they're out of salads or something or some of the ingredients to be able to prepare whatever it is you want to order. And now they can't get that. And so then they're like, well, screw it, give me the burger and fries then. And then
Yeah.
and then also bring the the fudge sundae for dessert, right? Like and they're just like because they just
Yeah.
get that screw it mentality or that all or nothing mindset where it's like go into it like just be flexible. Like they don't have that. All right, cool. Like what's another option you could get? Like you're still in control. Don't give up that control just because one situation doesn't go the way you were hoping to.
Yeah.
And I think it's, also when you're on vacation, other things that I try doing is like watching liquid calories. Like I try not to drink any of my
Do you drink
calories. Like
alcohol?
I do drink alcohol, but not very often.
Mhm.
I mean, really, like if I go to like a show or something, I'll drink some
Sure.
alcohol or like, but there is
Don't you have to
maybe,
pee all the time if you're so I don't so I don't drink alcohol, but I drink plenty of caffeine. Like if you go to like a show, EDM show, I feel like if you were drinking a lot, wouldn't you have to like go pee all the time? Like when I see people really drinking a lot, I'm like, I would have to just I feel like I'm like always drinking fluids. Like I'm always drinking something. So like I'm like
yep.
I gotta go to the bathroom enough. If I'm drinking alcohol, it's a diuretic. It's just gonna go right through you.
Yeah, yeah. I definitely don't drink much. It's just I just prefer not to. And you're right. Yeah, exactly. Especially like we were joking before, like with like the shows and such. I love to get as close to the front as I can. And like once you're
Oh, see,
once you're up there, it's hard
we've
to get.
aligned on everything so far, but right now we're not aligning because I'm like, tell me why do you like to get because I'm like, put me in the back where there's the least
Really?
amount of people. Yeah, I
Oh
don't like
man.
I don't like being in huge crowds of people. It turns me off, man. I do not like large crowds of people. It's just something that I've never liked. So I like to be in the back where I can see everything, like where I can see what's happening in front of me. Dude, to be honest, I don't really feel at ease when I'm in large crowds. I never have.
Yeah.
I'm always waiting for something to go wrong. I'm always wait. If there's shit going on to my left, I can't focus on what's over here. I'm focused on like, okay, what's going on? Why are they fighting? Why is this kind of encroaching on my crowd? Okay, now I gotta watch out for this. Oh, my friend's wasted. He's acting like an idiot. now I gotta watch out for him. Like that's where my mind's going.
Yeah.
I'm kind of elsewhere. It's hard for me to be present. That's why I don't go to a lot of shows. It's
Yeah.
hard for me to be present. I tend to like to be in my comfort zone. And when I go out, I tend to like be like, all right, let me just focus on keeping everybody safe. And then when I get back, I can kind of relax. It's just I've always been that way. So like the rail to me, like when I see it, I'm like, I don't want anything to do with it.
No, oh man, I don't know, and what's funny is I'm not a huge crowd person either, but except for this. And
Yeah.
I think it's just because, and I saw a post earlier, and so I'm not even going to try to quote it again, but basically it was along the lines of like the super cool thing about these shows are just everyone just like is there to have such a great time, and just like a lot of like I'm sure have you heard like the acronym PLUR, was it like peace, love, unity,
Yeah.
respect, I think.
Sure.
And so like everyone's just there to have a great time. Like you meet a lot of really cool people, you're just vibing out with all kinds of
Yeah.
people. Like I love that. And like to me, like I don't know, like I feel like there's just a lot of really passionate people. Like the closer you get up to the front, like everyone's just having a great time. And that to me, I just love, because it's a time and place when you get to just be your true authentic self. And not that I'm not, like whenever like I'm on a podcast or in person or like anywhere else I go, but there it's just like you just like there's just you get to forget about what else is going on outside of the show.
Yeah, it's kind of like a different world. Plus, there's usually no service, right? Like, so it's not like you're on your phone.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
so it's which is kind of nice. Like, it's like everyone's present.
yeah, and so like I love just being able to go there and just like totally just tune out everything that's going on and just be right up front and center in front of it all. Like
Headbanging on the rail.
headbang on the rail. Like that is my cup of tea when it comes to the shows and
What
such.
got you into EDM? Like, how long have you been listening to it? Like, what got you into it?
Just since when I moved up to Michigan for a short period of time in 21. That was the first time I ever went to an EDM show. My first show was Kaiwachi, when he came to Grand Rapids. And actually funny, so really funny story here. When Kaiwachi was going on his tour, and I think it was the Skins tour, and Grand Rapids was his first stop. And he put on Twitter about he was like, I'm gonna bring some pre-workout to the rail. And we were all like, what's this mean? Like we were already planning on getting there early because we wanted to get to the rail. And we were at the rail and Heritage was playing. He was his opener right before he came. And next thing you know, like we just look like we're like looking up at the stage and we look right in front of us. We're like, oh shit, like there's Kaiwachi coming down the rail with pre-workout, scooping it in everybody's mouth as he's
Dry
going down the
scooping it?
rail. Dry scooping pre-workout with everybody.
Was it like stim? Was
No,
it like
oh. No, it was stem.
Yeah, that sounds illegal.
Yeah, yeah. But he actually did have a little. It's funny. Me and my buddies are all actually on his Instagram on a reel doing it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'll send it to you. But he has like you can see like a little sign that he's holding up that's like you're consuming pre-workout, like you consent to it. Yeah, they were like showing that in your face to like make sure you
like as soon as you take it, then there's like someone else like with a waiver like right behind him like making you sign this like if anything happens.
No, it's more so like
I could see where that would be dangerous, like where because some people can't handle like I mean if they drink a Diet Coke they're up all night. I mean I don't know about you, how much do you drink pre-workout and caffeine? Because I'm an advocate.
Yeah, I'm a little bit too much caffeine.
How much caffeine?
Oh man.
Like so like on a daily basis and then also like while you're cutting and stuff like that.
It really doesn't change, but like what phases I'm in, honestly. I mean, gosh, four or 500. 400 or 500.
Okay, does that really mean 600 or 700 or you
some days probably?
Okay, all right, yeah, I was gonna say it's
not
like
all
weight,
the time.
like when someone says like their weight, and it's like or their height, like it's like, are you sure? Are you sure?
So it really does depend. Like there's Sundays when I don't drink any coffee. There's Sundays I drink a whole pot of coffee. There's Sundays when I drink energy drinks. There's some days I don't drink energy drinks. There's some days I don't drink at all.
Yeah.
So like it really does depend.
Oh, you're talking to someone who's got more caffeine in their blood than blood, so no judgments here. But what I found, because my caffeine nowadays is pretty freaking low. It's about as low as it's been. During prep, it gets up there. I mean, it'll get it to 700-800 milligrams of caffeine a day, just because like
Prep brain.
it's it is that, but it's for me, it's more like I like having excess in some area when I feel so restricted from like, let's say I'm eating, 1700 calories or whatever, and I've been cutting and I'm 40 pounds down, shows coming out. I'm not going, I don't go, some people will dine out during prep. I don't dine out. So I remove all like estimations, anything like that. So food, like restaurants, all that stuff, prep by me, which
Mhm.
that doesn't bother me. But what ends up happening is like you're like you don't drink alcohol, you don't you don't you're uber diligent on your food, no restaurants. So it's like what else is there? Like you're like, all right, caffeine. So it's like something from that I look forward to because
Yeah.
I'm I'm like, all right, something I can do in excess. That's great.
And
So I'll let the caffeine get up there and it comes back down over time.
yeah.
But during prep, like I've seen some high caffeine days, Chase.
I think part of my problem is like honestly, like a lot of times like the energy drinks and things like that, like I drink them for taste. Like if they like for example, like I love like the Ghost energy drinks, like one of my
Yeah.
favorites. But like
Yeah.
if they could make that not caffeine, I would drink that instead. Like a lot of
Well,
times I
do
don't
you
even
like
care about the
diet
caffeine.
drinks? Like diet?
Yeah.
Because really, yeah. Okay, so here's what I've been doing for to because I have everything you're saying. Okay, we a lot. Yeah, like I
Yeah.
agree. I like the taste of all that stuff too. It's fun.
Yeah.
And like the crazier the taste, the better. So like if you're telling me this stuff tastes like unicorn blood, let's go.
Right.
I'm into that. Like I like
Yeah.
that over like strawberry kiwi. Like I want
Yeah.
it to taste like it's you know doing something. It's giving me some energy.
Yep.
So I like all that stuff. But what I've started doing is just so pre-workout to me that stays in. But I also noticed, like, I don't really feel too much of a difference with 180 milligrams of caffeine pre workout to 300 milligrams of caffeine pre workout. It doesn't really do anything different for me anymore. I
Hmm.
mean, I don't know if that's just because I've been taking caffeine for so long or because once you get to a certain point, it really, the effects are pretty negligible. So I like for like pre workout, I like 200 milligrams. That to me is fine because it gives me room for more caffeine throughout the day. And I just don't notice that I need an extra 300. Some of the pre workouts go up to 350. I don't really need that pre workout.
Yeah.
But then I started subbing my coffee out with decaf. And what I do, it depends on what I'm doing. So
Yeah.
that's also a big thing. So like let's say I'm training at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but in the morning I don't have anything going on other than like just emails.
Yep.
So I'll wake up and I'll have decaf coffee. I can't really tell a huge difference between the decaf and the caffeinated. It's just one of those things where it's like the act of consuming coffee, that's just enjoyable.
Yeah.
So
Same.
so yeah, right. So I've swapped that out and then I've swapped out my energy drinks for diet soda. So kind of same thing. It's just kind of adjusting
Still get
some
the flavor,
things
but
and
less caffeine.
yeah, right. So
Yeah.
those have been, things that I've done. To be honest, I don't feel when I'm taking high amounts of caffeine, it doesn't like feel bad on my body. I don't like my sleep doesn't change any nothing.
Yeah.
So there's no real change there other than I like just not having 800 milligrams of caffeine per day. I think
Yeah.
400 is fine.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with taking 400 milligrams caffeine per day.
Yeah. Like I said, there's definitely days when I probably have less than that. And there's definitely days when I probably am close to like that
You're not
800 milligrams.
drinking caffeine right now. I'm surprised.
No, no, actually, what I was drinking before this was just one of those ice sparkling water. It's empty now, but I was drinking one of those, which are caffeine free. But
Whenever I have like something going on, that's when I like to drink caffeine.
yeah,
So like a podcast, that's caffeine. Show day or like a client doing anything, like if they got a show, no limit. I like it's like those are the times where it's like
yeah,
if I'm going out to socialize, no limit. Like
yeah.
that's because that's when I go out. That's my thing. So why don't we talk about like alcohol and like going out? Like how do you approach that with your own lifestyle? Because that I mean that's a sustainable type of thing. How do you fit that into your calories?
So usually, I mean, to be honest, like me specifically, and again, this
Yep.
is just me, like I drink alcohol so infrequently that
Okay.
probably when I am drinking it, it's probably one of those days when it is just like gonna just enjoy the day and not go overboard,
Sure.
but also just like I'm probably not tracking it just because it's one of those, it's so
So it
rare
falls
for
in line with one of those special meals then.
exactly,
Okay,
exactly.
gotcha.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, now, like, granted, like, when I was living up in Grand Rapids for a while and going to shows really frequently, like, yeah, I would have to plan ahead for some of those things and work that stuff in. But for majority of the time when I am drinking alcohol, it's usually a special occasion that I'm not super super stressed about it. A lot of times, what I'll do though is still along the same lines of what we kind of discussed earlier. Is I'll have a little bit lighter meals the first part of the day, and then as I'm going into dinner time, the evening, or whatever event, the show, whatever it may be, and drinking alcohol and having food and things like
That
that.
works better
That's
because you probably get drunk quicker and then you have to get to spend less money.
that's right. Yeah.
That's bad advice. Don't listen to us on that one. We're just playing around.
Yeah.
The
I'm
thing
usually
with
just more of like a two or three drinks and
yeah,
I'm done anyways.
the thing with alcohol though, for people to like watch out for is you can um track alcohol. So that's something that you can do is track the calories in
Yep.
alcohol, which is totally fine. I've gone over that in some other podcasts. But what I find with alcohol is typically what happens is people when they start drinking, that's when they that switch comes on, like you were talking about.
Yep.
And that's when they start going, oh, I'm drunk. So why don't we eat this? Why don't we eat that? So that's something for people that's more of like a personality, like know your own personality. And if alcohol tends to lead to like binging in some form or another, or eating things where you're typically not, that you don't feel good about the next day, then that's something to take into consideration because there are plenty of people that can go and have a couple drinks, but then there's some people that will go have a couple drinks and that's all they need to flip that switch. And once that flip switch goes on, it's hard to turn off. So
It is.
that's more of a case by case type of thing. So one thing I do think is really important, and this goes for anyone that's been on it's made this a lifestyle, is talking about motivation. Motivation is a huge thing. I need to be motivated to do this. I need to get motivated to do that. I need to be motivated to go to the gym. I need to be motivated to hit my calories. So, as someone that's been doing this for a very long time, one thing about motivation is it is not reliable. Motivation, I look at motivation as a tool. When it's there, I use it. When it's not there, it's discipline. It's those steady habits that you've built over the years and decades, however long you've been doing this. It's the how I was saying this is something that's integrated into your lifestyle and something that should fit seamlessly. Motivation isn't really part of that. And I think a lot of people struggle with that part because motivation is that exciting feeling that gets you going. And that's great. I mean, I think
Yes.
external motivation is good. That's, yeah, I feel great. That's external motivation.
Yep.
But that has a shelf life. And that
Yes.
it's not a matter of if, that's a matter of when that will stop. So external motivation is great. Love it. when you're feeling good, you're feeling excited. That's awesome. However, that has a shelf life. And when that stops, which it will, how did you go about managing that and staying internally motivated while you were just kind of feeling like everything else was just becoming boring, drag, or you just didn't want to do the day-to-day work?
Yeah, I mean that's really tough when I mean like when motivation dies out, like I get it. Like I love I had an analogy, I forget who I heard it from once. Compare like motivation to like a match. Basically, like when you strike the match, it's lit, you have all that motivation that's burning hot, and you can use it to light other things and get things going, but it's also going to burn out really quickly if you and so you have to either use it
Yeah.
or you're going to lose it, and then you're going to have to do something else without it. And when you're not feeling motivated, I think it's just really important to like one, make it really easy to get going. Lower that barrier to entry for yourself. I think it's one thing a lot of people when let's say like since we talk about like weight loss and things like that, like when we're looking at like fat loss and trying to get this going and getting your journey started, a lot of people want to feel motivated. And you might be and first of the year we might be feeling really motivated right now, which is awesome. But if you're not, you might be viewing this as something that you need to do a complete 180 of your entire life. I have to start tracking my calories. I have to start doing cardio. I have to start strength training. I need to start journaling. I need to start doing all these things. How about we just lower the bar a little bit? We make it really easy for you to get started. How about we just let's eat protein with every meal? Let's go for a 5-10 minute walk every day. It may not seem like much, but right now I could care less about what you're doing and more that you're doing something. Because in the very beginning, you need to start building that momentum up, stacking wins day after day after day after day, proving to your older identity that you are doing something different and you're capable of change and that you can be successful with that change as well. And so as we begin to make changes and slowly build that momentum up, that is when you can start doing more complex things. But in the very beginning, when you're not motivated, we need to take a step back and say, all right, how can I make this really easy for me to win right now? Set myself up for success. You can always do more. So like when I say like lower the barrier and make it a 5-minute walk, you can always go for a half hour, 60-minute walk
It's
if you want
progressive
to.
overload in
Again,
everything.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. But like, you could always do more, but start small and work your way up. And don't make it seem like you have to climb Mount Everest the first day.
Yeah. Motivation is one of the biggest things that people struggle with. That's where I figure, that's where I think having a like definitive why, like, why am I doing this?
Yes.
Right? Like, why, you know, for me, why am I doing this? Well, I love bodybuilding. I've been doing that. I've been doing this for X amount of years and I'm eternally passionate about it. I want to be the best natural bodybuilder that I could possibly be. And that's my why. When it's, 5 o'clock at night, because I've worked multiple different jobs while doing this lifestyle. So I've worked from home, I've worked in sales where I'm on the road all day, driving around the state. I've worked in offices where I'm there from 8 to 5. When it's 5 o'clock at night and it's snowing out and it's -3 degrees like it is right now, and I just came back from the office and I'm sitting in the gym parking lot and looking at the snow and it's dark and I'm like, okay, I don't want this isn't necessarily what I want to do, especially when I'm like
Exactly.
prepping or something and I'm energy is just low. Plus, when you're working a job like an office job or customer service or something like that, any job really, there's stress. Like there's definite stress involved. So the stress of the day has worn on you. Well, that's when having a why becomes way more important than external motivation. Because if you think that you're motivated to go into the gym and kill it after a long day and it's dark and you just want to go home, then you just don't fully understand how this works. Because I do think that people from the outside who maybe have never been in this lifestyle for a prolonged period of time think that people who are very fitness, or where fitness is a big part of their life, I think that they're just motivated all the time. And I don't not sure why. Maybe there are some people online that make it seem like it, or you've always saw like these real high energy, like, yeah, let's go. We're like anybody else.
Yeah.
So the difference is we just go and do it when we don't feel like it, which is most of the time. I mean, that's realistically, there's a lot of different things where I would be like, well, I could go and do this, or I could go and do that, or I have all this work in front of me, but I have to, it's just what it is. So you kind of give yourself that, like, you don't give yourself that option.
Yeah. And I think you have to also, I think one thing that's helpful is in the moment when you don't want to do what you know you need to do, think of the outcome, not the action. Like, what is it that you're about to do, but what is that you're trying to achieve? And so if it's like, let's say going to work out, like you said, you're sitting in the parking lot at the gym, don't want to go work out. Think about how great you're going to feel after you're done with that workout. They always say no one ever regrets a workout, right? So like, it's one of those things where like, think about what you're going to be doing and how you're going to be feeling after you get done with that workout. Maybe you don't want to meal prep because you're like, oh, I don't have the time. And it's just, yada, yada, yada. All the excuses come in. You're not motivated to like start your meal prep and go to the grocery store and yada, yada, yada. But think about the feeling of what it feels like when you're done and you have all your meals prepped for the week and you don't have to think about food that week.
Yeah.
Like, let's think about the outcome, not the action itself.
For sure. What do you do for meal prep? So that's another thing that's important. How do you go about your own meal prep? What do you find works best? Like from a sustainable standpoint, how do you what's your preferred way of doing meal prep, or do you meal prep?
So I always use the word meal prep, but I do more of like a food prep. I prefer to more so do like just cook my proteins ahead of time.
Mhm.
Have them ready to go because we all know like that's like the thing that takes the longest when we have to prepare a meal. It's usually the protein source, and so I'll make the proteins ahead of time, and then like my veggies I'll prepare in the moment. Same with carb sources in the moment. Sometimes I'll prep some carb sources ahead of time, but a lot of times it's just coming down to like I'll make some like I love I try to eat a lot of fresh vegetables when I can, but sometimes like I use like the steamer bags a lot. Those
Hell
things are like
yeah,
my
those are for
those
great.
things are my best friends.
Yeah, they're great.
It's just like, so that's the way. All right, I got my protein already cooked. Pull that out, heat it up, throw a steamer bag in the microwave, and there's my dinner. If I'm having a carb source with it, sometimes I'll even use like little minute cups of rice. Sometimes I will, take a sweet potato and microwave it real quick to steam it. I mean, like there's just that way it's super easy to do. It's just have that protein up ready to go ahead of time.
Meal prep is one of those things that has been way blown out of proportion to seem way more complicated than it
I
has
love
to
saying
be.
people say they're Pinterest meal peppers. I call them.
Yeah, screw all that. So if if that works for a
Yes,
person, that works for a
for
person.
sure.
So from a sustainable standpoint, I'm just going to tell you how I meal prep. And again, I've worked many different kinds of jobs while doing this, so it works in any scenario. What I like to do is I like to keep things simple too.
Mm-hmm.
So during the day when you're working and stuff, you have to prep food. I've never been a prep on Sunday type of person and prep for the week. That works for people. That's great. If it's sustainable, that's sustainable. I've always been a whip it up and go. So what I do is during the day and like during, let's say if I have a work day and that work day goes till 5, either the night before or the morning of, I am tracking, weighing all my food, but that those food sources they're not chicken, they're not beef, they're not like whole foods. They're more protein shake for protein, protein bar for protein, a microwavable healthy choice meal for a balanced meal, and oatmeal, protein chips, sandwiches. Let's see, bars, fiber bars, all these different bagels. That's a good one. All of these different things that I can put into a bag, and that's the prep. That's the prep for me. So they've been factored into my calories. They've been weighed on my food scale. Great. So let's say I need 3 or 4 meals while I'm gone. Okay, well, how long did that take me? It took me 2 seconds, right?
Mhm.
Let's say I need like a pre-workout treat. Oh, okay, I threw in a Rice Krispie bar or something for my carbs. That's been that's been plugged in there, and we're good to go. But when I get home, that's when I have my daily servings of vegetables. That's when I have the things that take prep work, because now I got 2 meals at home. Okay, I'm home. This is no big deal to cook these. So I find that keeping it super simple during the day works really well, because you don't have to stress it at all. I mean, it takes me, like we're calling it meal prep, but I could prep my food for that day
Yeah.
in probably 3 minutes. The
Yeah.
more you do it, that's that skill. Once you
Hmm.
do this stuff, you could cook a meal in under 5 minutes if you
Yep.
need to. I mean, I could cook. One meal that I do often is either stir fry or tacos. I love it.
Yep.
Never gets old. I've been eating it for years. It's a great way to get your vegetables in.
Yeah.
Throwing your vegetables in a tortilla with some sort of protein and putting some like barbecue sauce or something on there,
Yep.
it's so good. And you're getting your vegetables in.
Yep.
I could make that meal: beef, vegetables, rice, toppings or whatever, weigh it on my food scale, clean the pan, because I'm a big clean the pan before I eat. I don't like having cleanup afterwards. I throw that right in the pan. I've
Yeah.
always been that way. I just don't like having to eat and then go back to clean. So
Yeah.
have that cleaned in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Just from that repetition of doing it so many
Yeah.
times. So the more that you do these things, the more that you food prep, the more that you get to know your food sources. Because I mean, you track calories. I track. Do you track calories or macros?
Calories and protein.
Okay, all right. So I track macros, but we're speaking the same language.
Yep.
And I have clients that track calories. I have clients that track calories and protein. I have clients that track macros. So same thing more or less, and we're talking on number point system.
Yep.
Um, you track these things, and you get much better with figuring out what food sources work for your calories or your macros the more times that you do it.
Yep.
So when people get overwhelmed at first, because this probably even at this level could to a beginner sound a little overwhelming, but the more that you do it, the better that you get at it, the less you stress about these types of things. So food prep is a really, really big one. But I find that when you break it down and you're like, okay, wait a minute, I could have some you could throw some low fat chips in there and a sandwich, and you're telling me that's food prep? Yeah. Well, I could do that.
Yeah.
Right? So anyone can do it. It's just about finding these food sources that work for what your calorie allotment is. Then also, like you said, throw some vegetables in there. So I like to
Yeah.
throw those in at the end of the day, depending on what I'm doing. If I'm working from home, I don't really have to worry about this.
Yeah.
This was an approach that worked really well for me when I was on the go. Like, I would be on the road in my car for 8 to 10 hours driving around the state, going into
Yep.
homes. So I can't really have like these like well-rounded cooked meals. I could, but then I'd have to cook them and put them in a cooler and do ice and all that. And I just didn't want to do that.
Yep.
Although I did that for many years before I knew about macros when I was real young, and I was eating cold sweet potatoes and cold slimy ass chicken on the road,
Nice.
but still not getting results.
Yeah.
Still not getting, because I wasn't tracking anything. I was
Yeah.
just eating every 2 hours. So that's
Yeah.
a whole different story. But I
Yeah.
do think meal food prep, like you called it, I like that. It's what it is.
Yeah.
Um is one of those things that is really, really unnecessarily difficult and unnecessarily stressful for most people.
Mhm. Yeah, just find what works for you. That like I think that's just that sums it up. Everything is just like find what works for you. Don't overcomplicate it. Keep it super simple. You know, that I like to say, what is it? Simple scales, fancy fails. The fancier you're making it, the more complicated you are making it around yourself. Like if it's not working for you, like pivot, adjust, figure out what's going to work for you and your lifestyle.
Yeah, totally, man. Totally. So what's on the agenda for you these days? You doing any powerlifting or what do you got? I mean, what's your preferred form of fitness? I think everyone has like their preferred form. Like, so for me, it's bodybuilding. I know that you did powerlifting, but for someone it could be, I just had someone on who she did Brazilian jiu-jitsu, and that was her
Nice.
that was her favorite thing. So like everyone has their favorite thing. Like, what's your preferred version?
So right now, I've taken a step back from powerlifting for a little bit of time, and I'm now shifting more towards back to like some hypertrophy style training side of things. So more like the bodybuilding style kind of things.
That's the best. No, I mean,
No,
it,
I
it
mean,
is. It's
I
my favorite, but
I enjoyed my powerlifting days. Trust me,
yeah,
like I had a
yeah,
blast, loved competing, and that was awesome. But for me, like I'm just at a point in my life right now, I'm just like super busy, a lot going on that like I like, I just need to be able to go to the gym for like some days even just 30 minutes and
yeah,
just crank out a really good workout in 30 minutes,
yeah.
45 minutes versus some of my powerlifting workouts would take like 2 hours. So like
Yeah, well, because even like some of that mobility stuff that you have to get into before I mean,
yes.
when your numbers get up there, you got to be super careful. So that mobility routine before you're there 45 minutes before you even get into your
Exactly.
first, and then warming up. How long does warming up to your first working
Uh,
take?
exactly. Yeah. Like you're like the most hated, especially like I always laugh because like my gym that I go to here is like a really small mom and pop gym and like amazing gym. Love like the management and stuff like that. But they only have like two squat racks. And so like I was always like I definitely got some looks like great.
Really?
He's squatting. He's gonna be there for a long time.
Aren't gyms
And
interesting places?
yeah, I mean, like, no one like ever said anything, but it's
Yeah,
just one of those things where it's just like I could tell, like, people are like, all right, dude, come
you
on,
could feel it.
get out of the squat rack. You've been there for a long time.
You could feel the looks
Yeah,
on your back.
yeah. But now though, like I'm just more so like a little more laid back as far as
Yeah.
like just like not taking a lot of time. Just go in, train the muscles, train really close to failure each time, just to like
Yeah.
really work hard and get a quick workout in and get out, go home.
Love it, man. It sounds super sustainable. So that is exactly what we were talking about today. So, Chase, is there anything that you want to promote or anything that you want? I'm going to have all of your Instagram and all your information up here. Is there anything you want to promote? The floor is yours to promote whatever you feel like you want to promote, man.
I mean, honestly, first and foremost, Mikey, thanks again for having me.
Yeah, man.
I've loved this conversation.
Me too, dude. I
It's
think we
been,
talked about some good stuff.
yeah, I loved it. And as far as finding me, like you said, like you'll have my Instagram. It's at changing_chase. The Chasing Health podcast, as you mentioned in the very beginning. And I know we didn't really talk much about it, but I'm really passionate about like relationship with food stuff. And
Yeah.
so I know I sent you over, and you can drop it in the show notes as far as like there's a whole ebook that I wrote on repairing your relationship with food and like stress eating, emotional eating, binge eating, all those things, like really working in the nitty gritty details of like how I've overcome a lot of that myself. And so I put that all into an ebook. And so that's free for anybody who wants it as
I
well.
think that stuff is super important because there is so much emotion and so much just of life tied to food. And even like, I mean, when we get together and we congregate, like it's around food. That's what people
Mm-hmm.
do. Food is at the center of everything. Um, and so I think just having conversations around that topic is really important. It's also why things like addition and subtraction become very difficult when you're talking about food. All we're talking
Mm-hmm.
about at the end of the day is simple addition and subtraction, but because there's so much emotion tied
Yes.
to food, addition and subtraction becomes really difficult. Have you ever tried
Yes.
to like teach maybe even a parent or whoever so like about calories and I mean everything just becomes really difficult. It becomes hard to manage. And what about this? And what about this? And I can't figure this. And all you're talking about is addition and subtraction.
Yeah.
That is it. They can deal
It's
with
super simple.
It's no different than a bank account.
Exactly.
It's no different. So, but the reason is because of how much we are tied to food. And so there is a huge amount of emotion and just energy tied to food for a good reason. So I think conversations around that are really, really important, because also that's like super, super common. I mean, it's not uncommon to struggle in those areas. So I think that's really cool that you put yourself out there and put your experiences out there so people can learn from all the different things that you've done and all the experiences you've had, which is also why during this conversation, I like that we touched on actual practical ways that you go about things, that I go about things, so people can take those exact examples or learn from those exact examples, rather than us just saying, go eat this amount of calories, go do this amount of reps. Like, I don't think that that's going to resonate with people. I really don't.
Not what people need.
Are
I mean,
inundated.
Well, let's be honest. Like, if you need calories, go to online, go to like a TD calculator, and boom, there's your calories. Like, that's not helping people. Like, sure, it's important. You need to know that stuff, but like, that's not what you know. You need to know how to apply this to your life and make this something that is, again, at the end of the day, sustainable and something you can do long term.
Or even get a coach. I mean, you mentioned that when you really started to thrive was when you hired a coach. Same year. I hired a coach back in 2010, 2011. I never looked back. I still have a coach. I've had the same coach. It's just that's it. Like, that is a lifelong thing, because it's that important to me.
Yep.
If you want to get good at something, get a coach. I don't care what it is.
Yep.
Whatever skill that you want to thrive at, hire a coach. And you offer coaching and I offer coaching. So we'll have all that information. I'm going to include those resources in here as well. So make sure to check that out in the description. Chase, dude, I had a really great time having you on. I'm glad we got to talk about some things. I'm glad we got to talk about some music in there as well.
Yeah,
too, man.
Of course. Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of fun. Thank you so much again for having me.
Absolutely, man. Well, we'll have to do this again sometime soon. And congratulations again, dude. Congratulations on the 30,000 downloads. That's awesome.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
For sure. All right, Chase. We'll talk soon, man.
See ya.